Okay, we have the Citizens Journal, Ventura County with us here. We have George Miller and Debra. Debra, what's your last name again?
Tash.
Tash. That should be easy to remember.
I trash.
That's a good way to remember it. So excited about, we call it the marriage, the partnership, and the 1 + 1 = 7. Let's increase this synergy a little bit. But let me just start out with you, George. Tell us a little bit about the history of how this got going. I know we did a little calisthenics, but tell us a little bit about how this all began.
Well, it all started about 3 years ago. I was at a political meeting. There were about 60 people there. And some of them were bitching and moaning about press coverage and things like that, which people do all the time. And I just on a whim, I raised my hand. I said, how many people here would be interested in starting a newspaper? 3 people raised their hand, took down their name and email addresses. 2 of them already knew. Nothing happened. Fast forward about 2 years to December of 2012. I was in a meeting, Debra was there too, and we brought it up again. And this time, we had a unanimous opinion that we should go ahead and do something like that. At that time, there was only one person in the room that had any experience as a journalist, and that was Michael Hernandez, who was a teacher at LA Unified School District. And he offered to be our project manager and initial editor. He took us through and trained us and brought us up to speed, became our first editor. And it took us until about 6 months to actually get up and running. And we started on June 21st with our first edition. We had both a print edition and went online as well. And we subsequently added a Facebook edition as well. And the rest is history. And we've been operating just a little over a year right now. Unfortunately, we lost Mike. He had to go back to school in late August of last year.
That happens.
And we were blessed with Debra Tash, who appointed as the editor, and she's done an absolutely fantastic job with very limited resources.
No, that's good. And of course, I'm a trained man, Debra, and so whenever I see a pair and I see an empowered woman, so I know who the boss is, okay? So I'm sorry if anybody gets offended by that, but when you first saw that, what was going through your head and what actually said, this is something I might be interested in and has potential. So tell us what was going through your mind and the potential you saw in the Citizen Journal, Ventura County.
Well, I'm a published writer, and I've contributed editorials to the Star, and and most of what I do is fiction, but I've done travel work too. But I just see that there's very much a lack of local coverage. I mean, this is really just happening in your own backyard, and this is the only thing that you can really affect if you show up and you're informed. So I wanted to be out there and help people know what's going on in their community.
And that's a good thing. So what do you think the difference is? I think there's always going to be a need for traditional, and in reading your profile, I think you do honor, the traditional form of news. I see that. But what do you think the thing that you're going to fill in that's going to fulfill our culture and make it a positive change? And I'd like to hear feedback from both. So
several things. We didn't call it Citizens Journal by accident. We're not journalists. Debra's a writer. I wrote for a living for 30 years as a management consultant, but I've never been a journalist before. I've written many things. It's been quite a learning experience for us to do that, but we wanted to bring the citizen's perspective to the news. We also wanted to cover areas that we thought weren't covered. We also want to take advantage of the online format. There's a lot of things you can do online you can't do with a print newspaper. One of the most valuable things is links. We can tie into news all over the world and make it easy for people to just click and go someplace else, whereas a newspaper, it's very hard to do that. In addition, newsprint is very cheap on a computer. We don't have the same constraints of space. The main problem we have is attention span, which is the only real limitation to the size of the article we can publish. We use pictures a lot, and we also saw the need to use video. That's why we partnered with KADY TV. They're our primary local video partner, and we use a national one too called Next News Network. So we have a page just for that, and we run various features. For example, we covered last week's premiere edition of Good Morning Oxnard online, and hundreds of people read it and would not have otherwise seen it on another site. So there's a lot of synergy between KADY and also Citizens Journal.
That's a very good answer. And Debra, are you gonna plans to possibly change your writing style? He was talking about attention span, and his way of knowing that people's attention span in video is 3.5 minutes. It's matched. Do you change your style now that it's a little bit, but what do you see changing or contributing to, the new style with the Citizens Journal?
Well, you can't put your opinion if it's a news story, but just like with the Star, it's what you could take out of a council meeting that runs 5 hours. It's what you know is the story.
Mm-hmm.
What you know is the really important issue. Like I cover Santa Paula, and they're putting a 1%, 1 cent sales tax increase. They're trying to get it on their ballot in a community that's struggling. And that was the story from hours of a council meeting. So just to get my opinion out of it and just to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta tell you, I've met the reporters from the Star, and everybody has an opinion.
Mhm.
Everybody has an angle. And you have to remove yourself and let your reader decide what that is. And you can't be wax on like you do in fiction.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put the narrative in there.
I think that's a really important point. It's one of the main reasons we did what we do. We keep a firewall between the news and the editorials. Most people that know me know that I'm extremely opinionated, but you would not know if you're reading my news stories. My outlet is to write an editorial occasionally, but news stories, no, we don't. We try to show both sides, or maybe more than two sides, if those exist.
Now, I've been meaning to ask this to you, but in the traditional forms, what sells in the publications is, the bad, the tragedy, blood, disaster. That's what sells newspapers. But your items are what the citizens actually say. Do you think there'll be a more of a balance between what sells and what the reality is? And again, knowing that, my best mentors are publishers saying that advertisers are the oxygen of publications. But any thoughts on that particular
Well, we
cultural change?
actually get more donations than advertisers. That wasn't the plan, but that's how it actually worked out. But we're primarily donor supported right now. We also encourage advertising, and we have really good rates. And anyone that advertises gets in our twice weekly bulletins plus 24/7 for the duration. So we have tried to structure the publication so we're not overly dependent upon money. In fact, most of us are volunteers. We do pay stringers occasionally for articles, but Debra and I do everything for free, as do our approximately 20 contributors as well. Now, as far as what's interesting, we run some things that are public service that we know damn well a lot of people aren't going to read because we think it's important, but we also have to run things that bring readers in.
Right.
Now, currently, we're running about 60,000 visits per month, which sounds like a lot, but it's really nowhere near as many as we'd like. We see that increasing to about 100,000 by the end of the year. And we can analyze exactly what people are reading, because we can tell by hits on different pages, and we can tell by our Facebook likes as well, and exactly who's reading what, which not all newspapers have. Someone, for example, can say the Star is read by 200,000 people. Well, it might land on 200,000 doorsteps, but I know for a fact it's not read by those people, because I've taught people often, do you see that article in the Star? No. And the same is true with our publication too. Some stuff just doesn't get read. Some stuff does get read. So we have to pay attention to what people want to read. It's got to be interesting, and it's got to be lively. Video is a big help. We put video links into our articles whenever we can for that reason.
Anything build on that?
I mean, the old thing where it bleeds, it leads. I mean, that's, but sometimes you have to say this is affecting your wallet. This is going to go down your street.
Mm-hmm.
This is what they're proposing for your community.
Right.
Do you want it? And people do operate a lot from self-interest.
That's very true.
Now, we do cover all the police news. That's a lot of articles, and we probably have more of that than anything else, which does tend to color the publication a little bit more than I like. On the other hand, people need to know what's going on. If there's a problem in their community, they need to be aware of it. And all this stuff about showing good news is fine. We should do that too, but you have to be balanced. You have to let people know what's going on, what the threats are, and what needs their attention. as well as good stuff. We also cover business, we cover industry, we have a wine column, for example. We have an events column that shows hundreds of things you can do throughout the county. There's an awful lot of positive stuff there. And then we try to do things that may have negative connotations, but we can turn into something positive. For example, we will be releasing this week a special on Oxnard gang crime, what the police department, social services, and the city government are doing about it. It's a major feature article that will be out later this week. And we're doing a piece on Ormond Beach, which is a major project that's been going on for 30 years to try to piece together parcels. It's up to 700 acres beachfront now, and they want to make it 1,000. They just appointed their first full-time caretaker this last month. They have a person who handles the botanical gardens as well. And we'll be doing a special on that too, because we'd like to draw more people in there, to also build their support to help make this a reality, to make it into a real park. This has been done by volunteer work with chewing gum and baling wire for the last 30 years, pretty much the way we built Citizens Journal, just on our sheer will rather than a lot of capital.
I love it. And again, one of my signature questions I love to ask, and I want to draw upon your fiction writing, but I always start, imagine with me, Will, 5 years from now, what does the Citizen Journal of Ventura County look like? And really stretch your imagination. So you don't have to follow her. Why don't I ask you, what does the journal look like?
5 years from now, I'm hoping I get a bunch of...
Really stretch down, George, okay?
I was like a bunch of young lions taken over by then. And I'm 68 years old right now.
Yeah.
I did this because I saw a need for it. I would like to see some young kids take it over and really run with it and take it into the most advanced technology and communications available and partner with other organizations to make it a reality.
Excellent. And I'll go before you because I'm going to say what you're going to say is going to be in the archives. People are going to be looking at it and say, I cannot believe she said that because it's happening now.
I would really like to see what you're doing. Like what you're doing is partner with something like the Boys and Girls Club. Get kids interested in journalism, in telling about their community, get them involved. News doesn't come from Comedy Central. It comes from where you live. And that would be, to me, the ideal, that we could see the young people get involved.
Beautifully stated. So with that, I know my producer's here just walking over here, and I appreciate you too, and I'm looking forward.
I think the important thing that we might want to get in, something big happened last night, okay?
Oh, okay.
We were able to talk about,
This
the
is live,
energy.
right? So I didn't know that, so my apologies. So anyway, something very significant happened last night at the board meeting. I unfortunately was not there, and that's good because I'm a host, and I need you to go ahead.
I was there, and we've actually been covering that for a few weeks now.
Well, talk to us about it.
Years ago, the city included in its general plan the desire to phase out power plants completely from Oxnard, because they've been on the coast a long time, and a lot of people consider them to be an eyesore, they consider them to be an environmental hazard. And Oxnard has sort of an inferiority complex. They feel all these other cities, rich cities, Santa Barbara and all that, dump all this industrial stuff on us because we don't have the political clout to fight it off. They did put it in the general plan, but they never really put the right terms in there to shut off the power plants, nor did they incorporate it in their local ordinances. So what happened is that NRG, the energy company that runs our current power plants in Oxnard, Mandalay Beach, and Ormond Beach, basically talked about a proposal that they want to submit to create a 290 megawatt gas-fired, relatively green, high-tech, state-of-the-art, low footprint power plant. But a lot of people in the city are very much opposed to that, environmentalists, recreation-oriented people, and others. And then other people see the business reason for having it there that generates $25 million a year for the economy. It's nice to have a power source right in your backyard. And if they really got it off the beach and moved it backwards and low footprint, maybe you built a beach for us, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. But I would say at least 3/4 of the people last night wanted it out completely. And the city responded to that with a 5-0 vote. The only even close to dissenting vote was McDonald. And when he realized where things were going and that the 4 votes are already there, he gracefully caved and it was 5-0. And what they're going to do is impose a 45-day moratorium on any kind of construction approval. And they're going to attempt to make the changes to the general plan and the ordinances to stop those. And they said they'd also be willing to talk to NRG to see what's proposed, because there's a few loose ends if NRG leaves and vacates the premises in December, it would mean there's 2 enormous white elephant plants there, which they are not obligated to remove. The cost of removing those could run into tens of millions of dollars easily. So the bargaining chip NRG has is offering to take those plants out, do remediation, particularly in Ormond Beach, which is everyone's #1 target to make into a preserve, and then build their plant, supply the power grid. I don't know what will happen. You know, Mayor Flynn kind of said it kind of cutely last night. He said, you know, I used to be a car salesman, and he said, the guy that talks first is the guy that loses. He says, I'm calling their bluff. I want to see their cards. And right after that, he voted for the mandate, and the rest is history.
It's interesting perspective. What do you say to the people who were on the opposite side of the fence? You know, you were
Opposite from what?
from the people who did not want.
The people who do want it.
Yeah, right.
Well,
What do you say to the?
Well, first of all, the $25 million a year in revenue coming into the city, hundreds of jobs that would be created during the construction, which is about a 6-year period roughly, having employment in the community as opposed to maybe in Los Angeles or something like that, having local power, the fact that the infrastructure is all in place already, the high-pressure gas lines are there, the high-tension wires, the transformers, a lot of ancillary equipment that can be recycled. The site is already there, approved. And also the workers are there. There are workers who have the skills who, if they left, we would not get them back. So that's another thing to think about as well. It's a fairly clean plant, but it's not, obviously not as clean as solar. But even solar has its footprint. You know, building those things out in the desert endangers life out there. There's the problem of transmission lines and maintaining them. There are the huge costs. Obviously, electricity is far more expensive from most renewable energy than it is from state-of-the-art gas plants, which are much lower per kilowatt hour. So we're going to pay for this quite a bit. And the question is it worth to us? And the last question is, there's a mandate right now to have 33% of all electric power in California on the grid produced by renewable means in 2020. I question whether that's actually doable. So we need baseline power to make up any shortfall there. You also need power for when the wind is not blowing and the sun is not shining as well. So there's a reason that they didn't make it 100% renewable, because the 66% is the baseline power to come from more traditional means. Now, we're not talking coal plants or even nuclear, we're talking primarily gas powered. We have a very adequate supply of gas in the state and in the country right now.
No, that was very well stated. And I think my question was, for the people who are not happy with the decision, might be just more education, more clarification of perception. You know, that's what I was kind of asking. You know?
Well, it's clear that people that don't want the plant have primarily environmental concerns in mind. Is a modern gas plant a big polluter? That's questionable. The other question I didn't even mention is the whole issue of sea rise. A lot of people now think that the sea rise could eventually come up to Harbor Boulevard and flood the plant out. And it's already on public record. I made some comments about that, so I'll repeat them.
Unaccustomed as I am to interjecting, this segment is gonna end and we're gonna get into our next segment. But I think that as you and I were talking last night, that's what we're trying to do between Citizens Journal and Katie, is to get a transparent discussion about what this energy is really all about. I mean, all the emails are coming around, no 4 power plants. Well, they're not going to put 4 power plants, but anyway, it's been a really great discussion that I hope we'll be able to maintain some contacts with NRG and the city and find out where they're going. But this was a great first segment, and
Back to me.
back to you.
Thank you for having us on. Take care.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed it too.